Good evening and welcome to Vantage Point here on Newsfirst, where we take a look at the local and political landscape in Sri Lanka and also in the global arena from a different perspective. We take a step back and we look into the situation where we obtain in-depth and intellectual analysis on some of the key issues that are making headlines in the news. And joining me in discussion on today's program, as usual, we have Dr. Dayan Jayatilleka, a former diplomat and a political analyst. Thank you very much for joining us, Doctor.
Thank you and good evening.
Good evening. Now, when we talk about the month of July, Doctor, we are in July 2013, and usually when we talk about the month of July, it brings back dark memories, bloodied memories into the mind of all Sri Lankans, and that is because of Black July in 1983, where we saw riots taking place. Doctor, I would like to recount the incidents that led up to the 1983 Black July and what actually happened during the 1983 Black July from your perspective.
Well, Mahina, in the first place, I don't see it as a riot, because a riot implies that there are two groups clashing with each other, and there weren't two groups clashing with each other in July 83. It was an attack on Tamil people, so it was not a riot in that sense. You really have to talk about Black July 83 because it affected every one of us on this island, including the ones that had not been born. And it affected all of us negatively. It affected the country very negatively because we were blown off course, and blown off course into a whirlpool of 30 years. With the victory over the Tigers in May 2009, we have begun to climb out of that, but we are still not out yet, because I'm not certain that we have learnt the real lessons of July 83, 30 years on. I still hear the echoes of the kind of hate speech that led to July 83. I still hear that.
What would be your, let's say, crystal clear memory of 1983? One incident, Doctor, in your mind that really stands out from the 1983 Black July?
Good question. There was a kid, a Royal College boy. He's dead now. His name was Ahilan. He was a Royal College kid who joined who came into the office of the movement for Paramaswamy, Ahilan Paramaswamy, the movement for interracial justice and equality, MERGE, which several of us had founded in 1979. We had an exhibition in December 1980. It was called Koti Ahati, how the Tiger movement was born. It was not pro-Tiger, it was how things that happened in the country which led to the eruption of terrorism. The exhibition was held in St. Paul's Milagiriya Hall. This young Royal College student had seen this, had come for this, and then come looking for the MERGE office, and then filled out a membership form. He became a member of this anti-racist movement. In 83 July, he came into the office, we were all there, and he said, I just escaped, I was not there, I think my father and brother are dead. You know, he wasn't crying, he wasn't howling, he was in his teens, he was a kid.
This child was from Colombo?
He's from Colombo, he was from a suburb of Colombo. And he asked us to help him. So several of us from MERGE went along, I mean, let's say a few, not several, went to this place without him. We got the address and we went there. I was certainly one of them, and my cousin, who's now a senior lecturer in classics at the University of California, Pulsara Lianage, she was also one of them who went. Delegation, a small group from MERGE, because we knew this boy, we wanted to see what had happened. And we went to his home. This was a middle class or upper middle class home, and it had been destroyed and burnt. And in the doorway we saw a charred torso. I mean, part of it either had been burnt or hacked off. And this was in the doorway, this was one. And there was another body. So obviously the father and the brother had been killed. And we were just walking around, and when a group of very young people, kids, younger than we were in our 20s at that time, came along, one guy wheeling a tire. I mean, this is what kids do. I mean, you wheel a tire with a stick. But here, when people were burnt alive on tires, it had a different connotation altogether. They came along, basically urchins, and they were very suspicious of outsiders, even though we were Sinhalese, we were speaking Sinhalese. And they said, well, these people were hiding. They didn't say that they killed them, but they said these people were hiding. They had secret compartments in their house, underground, where they were hiding things, weapons, radio equipment, whatever. So, and they took us to see this. And what this was a little rectangle in the foundation of the house where some Tamil people keep their jewelry. I mean, you couldn't keep a gun in that.
It was like a safe.
It was like a safe. It was just the size of maybe 2 bricks. Mm-hmm. And this was good enough for this mob of young fellows from the area to deem these people to have been guilty either before the fact or after the fact. Now, this young man, Ahilan, he then joined one of the Elam groups, the EPRLF. And he died. He died because he was with, the EPRLF split up, he was with Douglas Devananda, and they had some conference in South India, some political problem between the Suresh faction and the Douglas faction. This young fellow was on a boat which capsized, and he helped save some of his colleagues, but he kept swimming, and then the combination of the sea and the gasoline from the boat choked him and he died. This is one of my most vivid memories of July 83. I have plenty more. I was on the road on the worst day, Friday the 29th. Mr. Charles Abhisekara and I was in Charlie's car, his Volkswagen. We were going to Professor Carlo Fonseca's house. Carlo will remember this. Because we wanted him to come and help out in the refugee camps, where we had people we knew, I mean friends. I visited a couple. The guy, Mano Rajasingham, he was a graduate of the Institute of Development Studies in Sussex. He's dead now, health reasons, and his widow is still alive, Shanti Sachitananda. They were in a refugee camp. I mean, you know, what were they doing in a refugee camp? So we went to Professor Carlos to bring him to this refugee camp, and we saw and were stopped several times by the mobs. And Carlo was living at that time next to Vijay Kumar Tungas. Vijay is his nephew. Vijay was living a couple of doors next. And the mob was marching from lane to lane looking for Tamils.
But the mob did so because 13 Sinhalese soldiers were killed. That was the basis reason for them to go out on the streets and cause a rampage.
I'm not sure about that, Mahina. You know why? Because earlier that year, in 83, there had been a mob attack on Tamil students at the University of Peradeniya. It was before the 13 soldiers. And if you just take the camera back just a few years, you had anti-Tamil riots in 1977. And the president of the day, President Jayatilleka, had to institute a presidential commission headed by a retired Supreme Court judge, Justice Sansoni. That was the Sansoni Commission into the anti-Tamil riots of 1977. Then there was similar violence on a smaller scale in 79 and then in 81. And President Jayatilleka himself called it a crisis of civilization. So there weren't 13 soldiers killed then. This was happening from 77 and including a few months before July 83. The second question is, 13 soldiers were ambushed by the Tigers and killed. Now, if your soldiers are killed by terrorists, it's an act of war. The response to that is to hunt down those terrorists or other terrorists who belong to the same organization and eliminate them, not to attack unarmed, non-combatant people who belong to the same ethnic group in other parts of the country. Now, after 9/11, 3,000 Americans, civilians, working in the world, in the Twin Towers, died horribly that day. Nobody attacked Muslims in the United States.